Broadcasting live from the Napa Auto Parts Studio here in Homer, Alaska, I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. Got a great program in store for you today. Mr. David Webb is my co-host and co-producer and executive producer and engineer. I don't know why he gets so many titles. He's sitting here beside me as we are broadcasting from the main studio here at the mothership that I refer to so often lovingly as KPEN 102 FM. I want to thank you for being here today. Should guns be allowed on university campuses in Alaska? Rush would pronounce that campi. Should guns be allowed on university campuses in Alaska? Think about that. We'll come back to it, but I wanted to plant that seed in your mind early. Should guns be allowed on... In other words, maybe the question should be refined just a little bit. Should students be allowed to conceal carry while on campus? Should professors and workers, administrative workers, be able to conceal carry in accordance with Alaska state law on the campuses of the Alaska universities? It's a good question. There's a House bill moving through right now. Who was it? Senator Coghill. It's actually a Senate bill. Senator Coghill has got a bill on the floor, Bill 176, SB 176, that would make it legal. Would actually, I think the better way to put it is that it would bring the university into compliance with state law, which is such that as a citizen of Alaska, you have the right to conceal carry. The question on the table at the moment is, ought you to have the right to conceal carry on universities? And I think back to a lot of the discussion about gun-free zones and areas where you're most vulnerable. And I'm getting ready to take off to Juneau myself, going to be going down on behalf of the Alaska Association of Realtors and doing some lobbying with our great representatives and senators down there in Juneau. And just more, you know what it is? For me, it's not really lobbying because we are realtors, members of organizations like the Realtor Group and other such organizations. We're just regular people taking advantage of the opportunity to go and speak to our elected representatives in their own backyard where they're making these laws and in considering laws and so forth. So I don't really think of it as lobbying as much as it is, hey, this is about relationships. Here we are in Juneau having this conversation with you. It means something, and I think it really is powerful and impactful when you and I actually go down there and discuss things like this. But as I get ready to travel, I think about, okay, take Grandpa Ed's knife out of my pocket. I don't want to risk losing that in security if I forget to put it in my checked baggage. Just leave it at home. So I go unarmed, completely unarmed, naked to the world's danger, just completely unarmed except for my cat-like reflexes and my jiu-jitsu skills. All right, maybe I have neither, but I've got, at least I'd like to think that I could still do a roundhouse kick and not have some sort of, lower ligament injury or, my sciatica act up on me. But do we want to create these gun-free zones? I understand going through the airport, obviously. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? They're going to bring a pipe bomb on board. What was that about? Oh, man, I couldn't believe that. Whew. Crazy, just crazy. But do we want to create universities that are sterile and completely gun-free? And I guess the question, just to put a little period at the end of this whole, actually a question mark at the end of this whole diatribe I've just gone through is, do you want the ability to defend yourself and or defend others? And will the sick among you obey the law? They don't care. If somebody is just whacked out of their mind, they're on psychotropic drugs and they're hallucinating and they think they're actually just playing a video game in real life, they don't care. They don't read the signs. They don't know. They don't know that this is a gun, or maybe they do know it's a gun-free zone and figure, hey, nobody's going to be shooting back. So that's the question. Should guns be allowed on university campuses in Alaska? Think about that, and we'll talk more about it. I love this quote. I was reading this morning Khalil Gibran, the prophet, and this jumped out at me, and he speaks on laws. He said, "What laws shall you fear if you dance, but stumble against no man's chains? What laws shall you fear if you dance, but stumble against no man's chains?" Khalil Gibran. Wants versus needs. Been on my mind a lot. My cousin in Florida, she's a school teacher, been a long-time school teacher, and her husband has retired now, but he was running a printing press inside of the Florida jail system. And so inmates actually had a for-profit, I mean, it's all nonprofit, but I mean, in other words, they were working towards a printing press. They made address books. They made anything you could print. They made them calendars, everything. And so this organization within the prison system would get contracts and win bids and so forth and put the prisoners to work, and it helped offset the cost of actually incarcerating the criminals. So it was a great program, and it also gave them a set of skills, gave them an opportunity to redirect and focus their energies, their anger, what have you, spend their time, etc. But it was really just a fascinating experiment. And I don't know why we don't do that in every state, to be honest with you. I don't know why Alaskan prisoner. Well, didn't we do a beef thing? Weren't prisoners up in Palmer like working on cattle or something like that? Anyway, long story short, I think that was a grand idea. But he and I, his name is Jim, and Jim and I were sitting on the front porch of our aunt and uncle's beach cottage there on the Gulf of Mexico, and we were on the screen porch. We had just come in from fishing. We're Uncle James is frying fish. It's the world's greatest fried fish. No offense to my dad, his is the second greatest fried fish in the world. And then Tiffany's. And do I have to go through the whole list? I mean, really? Can we just admit Uncle James takes the cake on that? All right, bottom line is we're outside, and Cousin Jim starts talking about wants versus needs. And you get into trouble when you mistake a want for a need, or you allow a want to develop into a need. And what happens is you give birth to an idea, it gets a little bit of momentum, and the next thing you know, it becomes a need that you, your department, your company, your municipality, your borough, your state, whatever agency or organization wants this thing, this idea, it becomes a need such that it's a burning obsession. And now a burning obsession is a great thing to have in regards to your relationships, business, private business, promotion, education. I want school teachers to have a burning obsession to teach. I want our firemen to have a burning obsession to be of service and get to the scene as quickly as possible. Our lives depend on people in all walks of life having these burning obsessions. Marriage, getting a new home, increased health and your fitness. You've got to have, and that burning obsession has to come from within. But when it's a taxpayer, I hear, there he goes. Oh, my God, I knew it. It's true, though. When it's a taxpayer-funded need, make sure that it really is, and that you don't mistake a want, like I really want this. I think, we think, collectively, we all think this is now a really big need. And we take this want, I want this shiny bauble, now you can't live without it. So wants versus needs. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what those bathrooms, the new bathrooms, much discussed bathrooms on Pioneer Avenue out on the Spit, taxpayer funded by the cruise ship passengers, but what of their costs and maintenance going forward? That and, we've got our Blackwater Bend Espresso Alaskan Mind Bender and much, much more here on what my mom calls the greatest show on earth. Broadcasting live from the Napa Auto Parts studio here in Homer, Alaska. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. Absolutely got the eye of the tiger. I hope you do too. I know you do. Wants versus needs. We're talking about that today. I also want to talk about the seasons of your life. As I told you, I'm going out to Juneau tomorrow. Actually, I leave tonight. And I go out to Juneau tomorrow, back on Thursday, and of course I'll never lose connectivity with you if you're my friend on Facebook. So go to Facebook. I'm Chris Story, or you can find me as Chris Story on Top of the World. And I've been getting a lot of positive feedback, by the way. Thank you very much for the On Top of the World productions we've been doing. We post them there on our Facebook page. We also put them on our website, AlaskaMattersRadio.com, AlaskaMattersRadio.com. So you can go check that out. And they're just 1-minute radio programs for you. And they are anything but contentious. No, they're very thought-provoking. You know, the whole On Top of the World program developed out of a sense of a duty that I want to take and do something of service for my community, for my country, and for my world. And so I thought, you know what? There's things that happen all over the country, all over the world, really, that I want to comment on that maybe aren't appropriate. That you try to find that, where do you pigeonhole this or that? And I walk in many, many different paths in my life. And so I said, that's it. I'm going to put, this is sort of a catch-all for any and all ideas that don't necessarily fit in Alaska Matters Radio or don't necessarily fit in Radio Realty or the podcast that I do for the State Association of Realtors. So, you know, we fear things, and we've talked about this a lot. I used to write about this in the Homer News, haven't in a while, but I used to write about fear, just a point of view about fear. We called it false economy appearing real. So that acrostic for fear, you know, is a false economy appearing real. That people were worried that because of this sense of skepticism or fear about what the economy was, what was happening within the economy or what was going to happen to them, they would take different actions and thus alter the course of the outcome of the economy and bring about sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy of a negative outcome in their life. And it reminds me of what Jim Rohn talks about so often, which is the seasons of your life and the seasons of, you know, the planet. And it just is in perfect alignment. So on Saturday, it was a gorgeous blue sky day, slight wind, nice, fresh, powdery snow. I live across from a lake. I crossed the street with my skis and went over to the lake to do a few laps. I was just going to take a couple laps around the lake. And I found myself just dreading today. Not because I'm going to come here and speak to you, but I found myself in real, like, a little bit of just knotted reluctance in my stomach. Do you know what I mean? That feeling where you're just, you can't quite put your finger on it, but there's something gnawing away at you, sort of eating away at you, and you can't fully enjoy the moment. And I realized and recognized what it was. It's my trip out of Homer tonight on a small plane to Anchorage, and then I get on a big plane and I'm not so worried about it. And then I come back and I get on a small plane and I come back. And so I'm letting anxiety that's going to happen in 3 or 4 days ruin the moment that I'm in right now. I've got this lake to myself. It's a beautiful day. I'm healthy. I'm skiing. I'm enjoying myself immensely. I'm listening to some really thought-provoking and educational message that I've recorded, and it's on my iPhone. What's not to be happy about? And I thought, you know, I'm really in a spring moment of my life as it pertains to getting ready to really go up a notch or a level within the Alaska Association of Realtors statewide association. And so it's going to come with it a lot more travel and so forth. So I'm preparing. I'm planning. I'm in that spring stage of that part of my life. And I'm worried about the winter. I'm worried about the winter that could be a turbulent flight, could be missed work while I'm out traveling, or missed conversations with you when I go out traveling more this year and so forth. And I'm worried about these things, and I'm letting the anxiety of winter ruin my spring. And it will throw me off step if I'm not careful. And I found myself falling more, and I'm on a flat lake. I'm no Olympian, but I'm a pretty good skier, alpine skier. No, I take that back, because if you ever see me at Alyeska and you expect something beyond what the skills I have are, I'm okay. I can go the Black Diamond runs on Alyeska, maybe not as proficiently as I'd like, but I can do them. So that just is the level of skiing I'm at. Not brilliant, but I'm okay. So I'm falling on my cross-country skis, and I realize the reason that I'm falling is because I'm not focused, because I'm worried about something that may happen in a winter of my life, and I'm ruining the spring of it. And I thought, how many of you do that? How many of you are like me, and you allow these kinds of worries and fears, this false evidence appearing real, to enter into your life and ruin what could be and should be a really positive thing in your life? So I wanted to share that with you. Remember, winter is the time to learn. So the winter of your life is the time to learn. Spring, the time to prepare. Summer, hustle. And it doesn't matter what is happening outside. If it's the summer of your season, the summer of your life, it's time to hustle. And in the fall, that's when you harvest and you reflect. And you own and you're responsible for what you've got or you don't have. And so that's where personal responsibility comes in. And I think to close that little soliloquy, if I can, I would say the answer to so many of our woes, the wants versus needs, over-regulation, spending taxpayer dollars with abandon, all of it comes back to that simple phrase, to take personal responsibility for yourself. If you do that, if you and I each take more and more personal responsibility and give less to the government, I'm not anti-government, not in the least. I'm just anti-authoritarian government. I'm of the people, by the people, from the people, for the people, not down to the people kind of government guy. And so that's where, I'm telling you that if we don't take personal responsibility and we keep giving it over, we're going to forever find ourselves in the winter of our life, economically, physiologically, just everything. Your health care. You may heard our promo going around on all the stations right now for Senator Begich's new law called Safe Streets Act. He's introduced it on the 6th of February. I don't know where it's going to go, but it sounds good, doesn't it? Are you not for safe streets? What kind of human being would not be for safe streets? It's another act to grab from the federal authority, from the central government, into your local control. And then you and I are going to be left dealing with it. And so it's those kinds of things. We say, no, thank you. We'll deal with our own streets. Thank you very much. Yeah, that means you might lose some of that highway money. We'll deal with our own. Thank you very much. Personal responsibility. Blackwater Bend makes this portion of the program possible. It's time for your Alaskan Mindbender. Get your textual devices out, your phones, get them ready. Get your phone finger flexed and ready. When good won't do, I encourage you to get gourmet. A friend texted me the other day. Yes, I do have some friends. And he said, I'm going through Blackwater Bend Espresso. Chris, can I get you a cup of coffee? And I said, oh, yeah. Now, see, here's the little secret. It doesn't matter if I'd already had like 3 or 4 cups laid out in front of me. I could have just drank a gallon of coffee. You send me that text, and every single time I'm going to say yes to Blackwater Bend Espresso. I want to thank Pat, her daughters, everybody at Blackwater Bend Espresso. You guys are great people, great company, and really gourmet coffee. Blackwater Bend Espresso is not your average drip. Here's your question. I want to send you out there for free. Remember, it's a whole coffee card. You don't have to go get me coffee. You don't need to do that. If you did it, doesn't hurt your chances of winning, does it? How could it hurt? In Howard's Pass, in the Brooks Range, a low temperature has recently been set of minus 96 degrees Fahrenheit. That's recently 96 degrees below zero. When was the last time in Alaska that 96 below was ever recorded? 96 below in the Brooks Range recently. When was the last time we got that low? In 1989, 1909, or 1889? 89, 1889, or 1909? Text me your name and answer right now. 299-7653, 299-7653. I'm Chris Story with more to come here on Alaska Matters Radio. I could listen to this song all day long, but Francis Bacon said a wise man makes more opportunities than he finds. Makes more opportunities than he finds. I'm Christopher Story, along with David Webb, engineering and producing this program back up at the mothership of KPEN 102 FM. Our website, AlaskaMattersRadio.com, AlaskaMattersRadio.com. And I want to thank Dave McCormick. Great guy, great webmaster, and GTL Designs is the name of his company. Done a fantastic job on my website, I should say. There is a difference, I guess. I'm ignorant in the ways of the web, but I do know that it's a great website. And let me just tell you about Dave real quick. Dave McCormick, GTL Designs. If you want somebody who can explain to you how to make a web page, how to do website, how to do something that's beyond what you think your abilities are, he's the guy. You just tell him, it's like you take a napkin and you just scramble some stuff onto it, and he hands you back a beautiful, functional website. And so I would definitely highly recommend Dave McCormick with GTL Designs. In fact, Dave's working on a website right now for Tiffany, AlaskaAloha.com. So she's got that site up already, but totally dysfunctional. It looks nice, okay, but it's not functional. And she said, you know what, Chris, you've been so happy with Dave. I'm going to go to Dave McCormick, GTL Designs. So you heard me talk about Napa, that this is the Napa Auto Parts Studio. And so I'm really proud to welcome Napa Auto Parts of Homer to our program, to Alaska Matters Radio. And so bear with me for just a moment, because it's important to me, not just because they're a sponsor of the program, but why they're sponsoring and who they are and what Napa Auto Parts here in Homer is all about. So I wrote this down. Napoleon Hill said to provide more in use value than you take in cash value, and you can't help but succeed. So think about that. How do you provide more in use value than you take in cash value? And I say Napa Auto Parts here in Homer puts this philosophy to work for you. And it's easy to say Napa Auto Parts, but who are they? You know what they are? They're Kevin and Courtney and crew. And most of the crew I've seen there for, 10, 12 years. I mean, a long time. So that means they treat them like family. And I first met Kevin, going on 20 years ago. I was a janitor. And let me just tell you, this tells you all, when you've been a janitor, and I was a janitor for about 9 years, and while I was building my business. And so I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, would go in, do floors, do cleaning, do all that stuff, come home, clean up a little bit, and then go and open my store and work there until... And I'm not whining. This is just telling you my story. That would work until, sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night. And that's where I first became aware of listening to the Homer City Council meetings and the Borough Assembly meetings. Loved them. Became a total addict and loved when the meetings would go over into the midnight hour, because I had plenty of work to do, and I'd stay there right there with them. But point is, Kevin, I'd go in on Sundays and clean the Napa Auto Parts store here in Homer. And this is going back, like I'm telling you, about 19, 20 years ago. And Kevin treated me like I was somebody that showed up in a 3-piece suit and was important. It didn't matter to him that I was just a janitor, that I was just coming in with my mop bucket, rolling up the carpets. He treated me like a real human being and like a good guy. And I've always admired Kevin and the job that he and his whole crew at Napa Auto Parts and Homer have done. And I'll share one more story, and this is about the crew. So Tiffany goes in on a blustery day, much like today, here in February. This was last winter. It was a blustery, nasty day, and the windshield wiper was just falling to pieces on the driver's side. So it's not the passenger side, it's the driver's side of her car. And she knows I'm busy. We're running numerous companies. I do 3 different productions. I'm a busy guy, and I'm not mechanically inclined to begin with. And so she knows I'm busy, but she goes into Napa, and she picks up a windshield wiper blade. First of all, I don't even know how to shop for them. I just take in my broken one, and they hand me the right, here's what you need, Chris. Great. What they said to Tiffany was, and I wish I knew the guy's name, but he said, would you like me to install this for you? Just out of the blue. And she's like, her first reaction was going to be, oh, no, my husband will do that. And then she said, you know what? Thank you. Yes. And he went outside, took great care. And it's a simple thing, but you know what it is, folks? It's the simple things that matter, and that's not Napa Auto Parts and Homer. Napoleon Hill said it best: provide more in use value than you take in cash value. So I want to thank Kevin and Courtney and say to the whole crew at Napa in Homer, welcome aboard. Wants versus needs, we're talking about that. We're talking about the Homer Tribune last week. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I spent probably more time than I should have last week on the mayor's response to a point of view that I had written. The mayor of Homer, Beth Wyeth, had written a response to me, very personal and very, very pointed and one-sided. I don't want to continue like this big back and forth, but I did want to set the record straight. And I wanted to air my opinion and put a final nail in that conversation. Now, I think it's final. We'll see. But that will appear in tomorrow's Homer Tribune. And that's my response to the mayor in tomorrow's Homer Tribune. You can read it online if you don't get the paper, homertribune.com. But I encourage you to pick up a copy of the paper, support a great local business like the Homer Tribune. So if you just throw them 75 cents, get a copy of it. And this is one of those point of views I think you'll want to cut out and keep around. So speaking of wants versus needs, the Tribune last week, and you can still read this on their website or pick up last week's paper, still be around for a little while longer, till tomorrow. The Tribune editorial written by Hannah Heimbuch and Sean Pearson. And it was great. I mean, it was really thoughtful. It wasn't lambasting. It wasn't one-sided. It was very thoughtful, and I thought they did just a really terrific job. And you may not be in Homer. You may be listening to this up in Delta Junction and going, what do I care about what the Homer Tribune editorial said? Because I think it's part of this whole Operation Take Back Our Town. It's part of that larger conversation of of what is really necessary, whose money is it anyway, and what are tax dollars, and how should they be spent, and so on. And so if you think about the needs versus wants, I think Hannah Heinbuch and Sean Pearson really put together a terrific piece. It's a little bit longer editorial, very well worth the read. Please go read it. And I'll kind of close up on this wants versus needs thing with sharing one piece of information that I've got. And this is not in any way a conclusive aha moment. This isn't a smoking gun. This isn't anything other than a continued conversation about the cost of doing business from the government's perspective. So let me just tell you, you know that I'm not a fan of the bathrooms that were paid for by the cruise ship tax dollars. I understand they're paid for by cruise ship tax dollars. I understand that businesses along Pioneer Avenue may really appreciate having now a bathroom where their visitors and people can wander into and use a nice, clean facility. My contention from the beginning has been, how can you excuse a $200,000 two-stall bathroom? I can't wrap my head around it. I honestly can't. And I pray I'll never be able to understand that kind of waste. I really won't be able to ever understand it. But to the point that I'm trying to make, and the larger point that I think we both agree on, is what is the cost going forward? What is the cost going forward? Well, the bathrooms we know so far since November have cost, and this is just 3 bathrooms. There's actually 4 in Homer. 1 at the Deepwater Dock, 1 by the ferry terminal in Land's End, and then 2 on Pioneer Avenue. Well, I only pulled the records on 3 of them, and they are the 2 small ones and then 1 of the large ones. So there's 1 more large one to pull the records for. But so far, I can tell you, it's cost you an extra $744 a month to have electric on it, those 3 bathrooms. The other bathroom, I'm sure, because it's just as large, is probably going to be right in that $300, so we can round it to $1,000. $1,000 a month since November. This is all part of that fiscal note. What is it going to cost? So we get it for free. I'm using air quotes. We get it for free. But what's it going to cost for you and I to maintain it going forward? That and much more. We'll talk about our Blackwater Bend Espresso Alaskan Mindbender question coming up. I'm Chris Story. Alaska matters, and so do you. Broadcasting live from the Napa Auto Parts studio here in Homer, Alaska, I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier, along with Mr. David Webb, who is engineering and producing the program. Our fact checker today is Mr. David Becker. I was off by a degree on the question. I'll repeat the Alaska Blackwater Bend Mindbender question in just a moment, and I have corrected it to 97 degrees below zero. I believe that was the accuracy with which we were looking for. Fundamentals belong to the ages, said Jim Rohn. They have been the same from biblical times and will continue to remain so until the end of time. Fundamentals. That means the truth is the truth. That means that if your word is your bond, I agreed to do this, therefore I shall do it. And I think that if you and I could agree on that, what else could we accomplish going forward? Can we just agree that your word is your bond, and if you agree to do something, you better follow through with it? And that is something that comes up quite a bit in government. So we've agreed to do something for you, and you then are guaranteed through the fundamental principle of honesty and truthfulness and integrity that we will be there for you. That's what makes the strength of the United States of America. The Constitution, that's what makes our flag represent freedom here in America, is that it means something. It's fundamental to the core of trust that you follow through on doing what you say you're going to do. So how am I drawing this back to Operation Take Back Our Town? Easy. I'm offended when my government says to a citizen that donated a piece of land, we will not follow through on our word. That, yes, you donated this park, and I'm talking about the Ben Walters Park here in Homer, Alaska on Beluga Lake. You donated this, Mr. Neal, in 1983. With a few caveats. We all agreed to it. Everybody accepted the transference of deed, etc. We've built a little park. We've got a nice place for people to use the restroom. By the way, it didn't cost $200,000. And we've got this nice little park. It's a little, I hate using the phrase, but I'll do it anyway, pocket park in the sort of right by the lake. This nice little quiet little park. We used to take our daughter there to swing. We'd walk down and feed the ducks, probably a felony, I don't know. And so we would just enjoy it and use it. And so Mr. Neal then said to the current city manager that he'd like the city to continue to honor its promise to plow a small area for skating. Now, that comes with some obvious caveats, like not in the summer, not in times of slushy, thin ice or whatever. I mean, obviously, it's when applicable. And so instead of honoring that commitment, we go to court and we spend not $10, not $20, but $32,000 in court defending the indefensible, and find a loophole big enough to jump through that the judge doesn't really have any other choice but to say, well, you're right, that's a loophole. It doesn't mean that not doing what we said was right. To win in court doesn't prove that you're on the right side of history. It doesn't prove that you did what is right. And that's what I'm asking of our local government on up to the state and borough and on into Washington, D.C., is to do what is right in spite of loopholes. And so you take that $32,000 that is now transferred from you, the taxpayer, up to an Anchorage attorney's firm and will never reappear in our economy. It will never reappear in your pocket. Ever. It's gone for good. We may as well have lit a match and burned $32,000. At the same time, we're struggling to figure out how we can have another part-time librarian. So we've got kids going in, we got people volunteering, but we don't have enough staff to cover the children's portion of our library in Homer. And we're struggling to find the monies to come up with that. And then I look over here on my left and I see us in court suing and spending $32,000 so as not to have to plow. For that $32,000, I think it's fairly arguable that it could have taken us on for maybe 50 years worth of plowing. I mean, seriously. And how about some community-minded solutions? I told you this months and months ago. Here's a solution. What if the city hall, what if the mayor, what if the city manager, what if somebody in authority had gone to a few of the plow guys and said, you know what? We find ourselves short-staffed. We don't want to raise taxes. We don't want to also fall through on this commitment. Would you guys be willing to cooperate with us and maybe take turns cleaning that out and kind of keeping that open when whoever's doing a route nearby? And you'd have had 100 out of 100 hands raise up and say, you bet. Absolutely, this is our community. And we could have saved $32,000. We could have saved face, and we could have saved the trust of local government. That's what goes missing. And I wrote an article not long ago called When Trust is Lost, It's Hard to Find. That was a great, what the point I was making was that when people don't trust you, and you're an elected official and you're no longer trusted, it's hard. You've got to earn it back. So you can't just go and wave a magic wand and write a nasty letter to the editor or a nasty point of view about Chris Story because he's not providing solutions. And this is what the mayor said. The mayor said, Chris Story's not offering up any solutions. And I'm scratching my head going, for the last 2 years on Alaska Matters, for the last at least 16, 17 months in the Homer Tribune and on the papers of the Homer News and on my own website, and whomever I run into offering solutions, and it's ignored by the mayor. She doesn't care to see it, is how all I can take from that. So a lot of people have said, well, Chris, we know you're against the bathrooms. No, wrong. And I'm not saying that it doesn't appear that I'm against them, because by all intents and purposes, I did Live at the Lou for a reason. I was broadcasting from one of these bathrooms to make a larger point, that is to say that we spent too much money. But Chris, it doesn't matter because it was cruise ship passengers' money. Do you realize that it's that same sentiment that has you and me and my grandchildren and your great-grandchildren obligated to a debt of $17 trillion? We are obligated to pay back $17 trillion. It's incalculable. Nobody can even figure what that is. What is $17 trillion in debt? And it's all stemming from the same philosophy that it's other people's money. The federal government can divvy it out like nobody's business. And in fact, though, it is your money. Even if it's not yours taken from your pocket, your left pocket or your right pocket, it's yours to pay back. And on the case of the bathrooms, I've got no problem. And I even own a duplex that looks right down on the bathroom at WKFL Park. No problem with a bathroom being down there. I have no problem with it. When my daughter Zoe was just part of a great rally that met at that park last week, and people were using the restroom. That's fantastic. So we can all agree that the bathrooms are, we all go to the bathroom. It's part of life. And to have public restrooms, hey, that's no problem. To spend $200,000, to ignore the fact that it's costing us about $1,000 a month in electric just to keep these things going forward, that's $365 going on forward in perpetuity. There is no stopping. There is no ending to the maintenance. When we expand our infrastructure, we likewise, as a small community, as a state, as a borough, as a country, have to then start funding depreciation accounts. And we all know that you can't touch those depreciation accounts. Oh, wait a minute. Unless you want to go do a study for $300,000 on whether, an initial design. Oh, there's so much more. Just those of you that missed the first half of the program, AlaskaMattersRadio.com is the website. You can go listen to it later. Also, in tomorrow's Homer Tribune, I have an article, sort of a response to the mayor, and I think it's solution-oriented. Whether she'll admit it or not, I don't know. I'm Chris Story along with Dave Webb. More to come here on Alaska Matters Radio. Anchor Point Natural Foods makes this portion of the program possible. Homer's Hub for Health. I like that. Just coined that. Homer's Hub for Health. Now, they just got a big organic produce order in. In fact, I've got it on Facebook. If you're not friends with Anchor Point Natural Foods on Facebook, you should join them. Just click like, and you'll see all the latest that comes in. Let's see here. She says, more fresh organic produce has arrived. We have kale, cilantro, parsley, romaine lettuce hearts, fresh batch today, plus they've got some from their last week delivery on sale. They've got Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, carrots, mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, shiitake, tomatoes, sweet potatoes. I mean, come on already. Yellow creamer potatoes. What is a yellow creamer potato? I don't even know, but I got to get some. Tiffany, get down to Anchor Point Natural Foods quickly before that's all gone. And you know what else they've got? It's funny because Tiffany was looking for some yesterday, and they just got this in. It's grass-fed buffalo. Grass-fed buffalo, certified organic, both beef and buffalo, available at Anchor Point Natural Foods. Supplies are limited. Don't sit around. They're next to NSTAR, 345 Sterling Highway. You can call Tara at 399-7900. 7900. Blackwater Bend Espresso, Alaskan Mindbender. So the question was, the way maybe I phrased it wrong. So in Howard Pass, which is in the Brooks Range, a low temperature of minus 97 was recorded. That includes, as like minus 42 temperature and then like a 70-mile-an-hour gust. So I had a collective, I can't say collective on this program. We're all about individuals. So the actual combined of the wind chill and the temperature pushed it to 97 below. All right. Question is, when was the last time 96 below was recorded? 1989, 1909, or 1889? Matt's already a winner. You can join him for a free coffee card at Blackwater Bend Espresso. Text your name and answer now, 299-7653. So we're talking about whether guns should be allowed on school campuses. And here's one thing that I enjoy about this debate. It really highlights your rights, your inalienable rights. And can somebody take those rights away from you? And you can say, well, wait a minute. All right, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. So you go to the obvious, so there you have First Amendment freedom of speech rights, but you can't obviously go into a classroom. I mean, so you don't lose your First Amendment when you walk onto the campus, but likewise, you don't have the ability to walk into a classroom at the University of Alaska and just start screaming epithets, just start screaming expletives. You can't do that, and yet you retain your First Amendment right. So does the university have the authority, the ability, or the right to take away your guns and say you can have a gun on the campus, but it's got to be locked in your truck, or it's got to be in a special locked locker? That doesn't do you a whole lot of good. Say, excuse me, I see that you're brandishing a gun and that you're shooting my classmates. Do you mind if I go out to my truck and get my gun and come back and deal with you? That's not going to happen, so it doesn't do any good. Forget even talking about it. So what if we said this? What if we said, okay, you good guys, right? Because nothing stops a bad guy with a gun like a good guy with a gun. How about this? We say to the good guys, the ones that are actually going to read, follow, and obey the policies that we present. If you are going to have a gun on campus, you may not brandish it. You may not sit at your desk and clean your AR-15 while you're looking at the professor. That seems logical and reasonable to me. If you're waving your pistol around, you're not in compliance with the law. But if you have it concealed and you're caught with it or seen with it, it's also not, again, it shouldn't be against the law. And why would you, this is my opinion entering in here. I asked you a question, now I'm offering my opinion. Why would you want to create an area where everybody knows there is nobody, no good guys with guns at all? So if you do feel like shooting fish in a barrel, hey, here's a spot that would be just perfect. So my opinion, I think it's an easy one to get behind and just say, you know what, if you want to abide by the Alaska state law and you want to carry a concealed gun, you don't need a permit in the state of Alaska. I think just because you're taking a college course doesn't mean you should not have that same right. So I support Senate Bill 176, Senator John Coghill from North Pole. He would like to explicitly prohibit the Board of Regents from enacting any blanket bans on concealed carry. That's the nutshell of Senate Bill 176. So I started an interesting conversation on Facebook. See, you should join me on Facebook. Somebody just friend requested. I accepted it, even during one of the breaks there. You should do it. Look me up, Chris Story or Chris Story on Top of the World. Started an interesting conversation. You can go join in about school choice. Is this debate about an amendment to the Constitution of Alaska, is it really about school choice, or is it about the privatization of schools and taking from public schools, or does it boil down to some people don't want religious schools to be funded? And does it come down to religion? And I mean, you know, we have that conversation on a lot of different levels, don't we? I mean, do we want abortions funded by public dollars? And somebody kind of chastised me a little bit and said, Chris, wait a minute. By public dollars, do you mean those dollars that were once private, taken by force, and then used in the public sector? And I stand corrected. Yes, Tammy, that's exactly what I'm talking about, are those once private dollars that are now confiscated from you and used elsewhere. It reminds me of something else I heard recently. Somebody said, Chris, about the cruise ship tax dollars that are, you know, the cruise ship can tell you where you can use these dollars. That's part and parcel of the deal. It's like, okay, you must use them on this, that, or the other thing. It's very, you know, a lot of side rails around those dollars. And somebody said, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if the citizens had the same power and ability to pay their taxes and then say, okay, I want my tax dollars spent here? And it reminds me of what Jim Rohn always said, be a happy taxpayer. He said, he says, when I write out my check to the IRS, he said, I always know that I'm funding the military. He said, in my mind, that's what I'm doing. I'm funding the military. You can fund what you want. I'm funding the military. But the larger question is, what's going on with this amendment to the Constitution? And I got a call from another friend who said, Chris, remember, this really isn't about the debates being a little bit shadowed or lost. The question is, shall the people of Alaska have a voice on this matter? Shall we have a ballot proposition? Shall we have the vote? Up or down, shall we have the vote? That's really what's going on here. And I'm going to reach out to Lisa Geisel. I think, is it Lisa or Leslie Geisel? I just call her Senator Giesel. Kathy, that's it, Kathy Giesel. I'm going to reach out to her because I understand that she is actually a sponsor or co-sponsor of this initiative. I met her in Juneau last year. I'm going to reach out to her while I'm in Juneau, hopefully interview her and bring that conversation back to you, or just have her on as a guest, because I really think it's worth having. It's an interesting conversation. I was sad to see that Todd Palin had scratched from the Iron Dog, but I may be the only one reporting this, but I'm blaming Tyler Huntington until further notice. It's Tyler's fault. I mean, Todd's won 4 times, and this guy's only won twice. So, be careful who you partner with in the future, Todd. I mean, you won 4 times. I think this guy drug you down, and I don't think you'll hear that anywhere else. Could you imagine riding a snow machine and not by force for 2,000 miles at one time? Incredible. We're going to talk a little bit more about public money and the Craigslist killer when we return here to Alaska Matters. Welcome back to Alaska Matters Radio. I'm Christopher Story along with David Webb, bringing you this great adventure in the last frontier. I want to thank Anchor River Inn. I love going out to eat at the Anchor River Inn. It brings back great memories. You can make memories today with your family. Go to the Anchor River Inn for great food. They've got gifts. They've got a full bar. They've got a gift shop, a grocery store. They've got everything. Anchor River Inn really is the heartbeat of Anchor Point. AnchorRiverInn.com, of course, is the home of the Anchor Cam. So you can, anytime, like right now, if you go to anchorriverin.com and click on their little anchor cam, you'll know what's happening on world-famous Anchor River right now, anchorriverin.com. I want to thank Jesse Klutz and the whole family out there. So we talked about the ballot proposition. Shall we or shan't we have the question? Shall we ask the question, do you want your monies used? And I don't fully understand it. I've got to tell you, I've got to be very honest with you. I always have been. That's a fundamental principle that I hold and will always hold, and that is to tell you the truth, that I'm confused. I don't 100% understand this. I've talked to my friend Glenn Beagle, who's very, very much in favor of this, is privatization even the right word, but the school choice or the voucher. Here's what I worry about a little bit, and I'll just tell you. We've got multi-million-dollar structures all around the state. All around the state that we have to maintain. We just bonded to put $2 million in roofs and some other repairs in some of these buildings. We've got multi-million-dollar tracks. We've got, a great facility right in the heart of Homer. We've got the beautiful Homer High School. And I worry and I wonder out loud if we go to this where the monies are divided, and what will happen to those structures. And I don't see your tax dollars going down. I'm not against private choice. I'm not against religious choice. I went to a Christian school for many, many years until we actually ran out of rope. We ran out of school. After I left the Homer Christian Community Church School, the CCC, CCS, we had, I think later then they added some other grades. But when I was there, I pretty much tapped out. You couldn't go any higher. It was a great education. Loved it. That's not my concern. My concern is what's going to happen to your tax dollars when we start to divide them out and split the baby in half. This is what I worry about. But do I want the vote? Absolutely. I want you to have an opportunity to discuss, debate, and really have this out and have it in a very public way without undue influence. And I think as long as it's at the political level, before it gets too much farther along, it's you've got unions involved, you've got other agencies and groups involved, and I don't know that our legislators are going to hear from you unless we put it to a vote. So I'm behind that. I can't wait to talk to Kathy Giessel and get my head around that more. I worry about things. I worry about underwear in Russia. This out of Moscow, a panty protest movement is developing in Russia. That's right. Lacy lingerie will be banned beginning July 1. The ban would outlaw any underwear containing less than 6% cotton. The Russian Textile Businesses Union says 80% of the underwear sold in Russia is imported. So the ban would boost the Russian panty industry's bottom line. Yeah, I think there was a little pun written in there. Over the weekend, 30 women protested in Kazakhstan. Also, they covered their heads with lacy panties. This is how they, freedom to panties. This is what they're shouting in Moscow. And you and I laugh at this and go, oh, that's silly. Really? Were we not in Homer just debating the thickness of a bag? Weren't we? Weren't we just having this very discussion? Aren't we being told on a federal basis that it's illegal not to buy a product? I mean, how far behind are we before we're going to be out protesting with underwear on our head because the degree of cotton contained within, and hey, you can't complain about this because we need local jobs, and if we disallow this thickness of panty or this amount of cotton in your underwear, well, then what we can do is just ensure that you'll have better jobs here. And this is, no, you can't legislate that. That's just going too far, but that's where it's at. Calhoun called me into his office earlier today, and he said, hey, watch this. And it was a YouTube video. Mark Dice, I believe is the guy's name. And he went out like on, I don't know where, Ventura Boulevard or somewhere. It's on the coast in California. And he goes out and he asks people. He's just dressed in a T-shirt. It's got some slogan on the T-shirt. I don't remember what it said. And he's in shorts and just a nice-looking guy. And he goes, hey, would you, Karl Marx for president? We're trying to run Karl Marx on the ticket. He's fully behind Obama. Obama's really supportive of Marxist movement. And he's endorsing Karl Marx. And would you sign this petition to put Karl Marx on the ballot in 2016? And 2016, people are like, oh, yeah. One woman actually, I'm sure many people said no and were hip to what he was doing, but you would not believe the number of clingers on, the number of people that were just mindlessly signing, I'll sign the petition, and didn't even really, and they're like, yeah, one guy was kind of had his hat sideways, one of those flat brim hats sideways, and he's like, yeah, I'm all about Obama, this is great, yeah, where do I sign it? And he's like, And the guy couldn't even contain his smile, and he just was smiling. He's just like, huh, okay, yeah, so you're behind Karl Marx. And the guy's like, yep, all for Obama, whatever Obama wants. And it's like, it's scary. We've all just got to do what we can to educate as many people as we can. Having the discussion about school choice, having the discussion about public-private money, having the discussion about wants versus needs and the real costs. We're in Homer having this conversation about a new public safety building. I want our police officers, our finest in blue, I want them to have a nice facility. I don't want the drunks and the meth heads screaming at them all day long. I wonder, could we put $2 million towards the existing building? I want our fire station to... I'm remodeling a duplex. It's right across the street from the fire hall, and I see this big, beautiful tanker truck. I don't even know what it does, but it's a big, old, beautiful truck that when your house is on fire, you want it showing up. It sits outside. They need a shop building for that. They need more garage space. I wonder out loud, what could $2 million towards that building do? And now all of a sudden we spent $4 million, relatively low cost of maintenance going forward. We already know what those costs would probably be. And could we do that instead of spending $15 million of other people's money with unintended consequences of these increased maintenance costs going forward? This is the question. This is the debate that needs to happen. You and I need to keep this conversation going. And we can, thanks to the great people at Napa Auto Parts in Homer. Again, Kevin, Courtney, welcome aboard, and Blackwater Bend Espresso. So your Alaskan Mindbender question was, with wind chill, it was down to 97 below in the Brooks Range and Howard's Pass. When was the last time on record we saw temperatures dip around 96, minus 96? Well, it was in 1989 on Prudhoe Bay, or in Prudhoe Bay. Minus. Dave and I were just talking about that. Once you get down below minus 40, I don't know that it really matters. It's freezing. That's like having, if you have $2 billion or $2.8 billion. I think it's the same thing. You don't really know the difference. So I want to thank, again, Matt and... I can't even read my own writing. Dan. Matt and Dan, you are both winners going out to the Blackwater Bend Espresso. So thank you, Pat, and everybody else. I want to thank Bay Realty. I want to thank just all our sponsors. I wish I had my list in front of me because, again, this conversation couldn't happen without you. And I sincerely appreciate that. You can go to our website, AlaskaMattersRadio.com. Be sure to look for my piece in tomorrow's Homer Tribune. It's a bit of a reply to the mayor in Homer, Alaska. And about that Craigslist killer, we'll just have to postpone that conversation to next week. But careful who you respond to online. Thank you, David Webb, for all of us at Alaska Matters. I'm Chris Story saying, go out in the great land and make a great life for you.
May your past be the sound of your feet upon the ground. Carry on.